The woods in Montana don't forgive. They swallow the unprepared whole. Men vanish between the pines, leaving only boot prints that melt away with the snow. But nothing in those endless forests cut as deep as my own son's words. "Bye, Dad. Go meet the grizzly." I never thought my boy would become my executioner. I'd spent my life believing sacrifice builds loyalty. Work hard, provide, keep a roof overhead, and love will follow. But that night when he stormed through my front door, demanding money with clenched fists and a voice sharp enough to cut steel, I saw it. The greed blooming in him like rot. His name is Tyler, 27 years old, my only child, the reason I clawed my way through 18-hour shifts, the reason I built my auto shops from grease and rust after his mother passed. I thought every scraped knuckle, every dollar invested in his future would mean something. Instead, I created a man who saw my death as the final business deal. It began on a Tuesday evening. I was at my desk, invoices spread out under the yellow glow of my lamp. Outside, Billings drizzle tapped against the window, that soft Montana rain that makes everything smell like wet pine. The day had been long. Mrs. McAllister's Buick needed a full transmission rebuild, and my fingernails were still black with grease. That's when the door banged open. "Dad!" Tyler barked, his hoodie dripping onto the hardwood. "I need $5,000. Tonight." My pen froze mid-stroke. "Tyler, what?" $5,000. Now!" He paced the room like a caged animal, sneakers squeaking against the floor. His hands were fists, his jaw trembled. "I just transferred your allowance last week," I said carefully. $3,000. "It barely covers rent," he snapped. His eyes glistened with something raw, not pain, not need, but entitlement. "You think that's enough? You think that pays for everything?" My shirt felt suddenly too tight across my chest. "Tyler, you've got to find steady work. You can't keep..." "Work?" His laugh was bitter. "Why should I work when you're sitting on all this money? When you control everything like some dictator?" The word stung. Dictator. After 2 decades of carrying him on my back, he saw me as a tyrant. "I'm trying to teach you responsibility." Responsibility. His face turned crimson. "You want to know responsibility? After you die, I'll be running your shops better than you ever did." The air went still. He said it so casually, like he was reading off a grocery list. After you die. Not if, not someday. Just when. My chest tightened. The son I'd raised with scraped knees and bedtime stories had just laid out his vision of the future, one where my death was a stepping stone. He must have seen the shock on my face because his expression flickered, like he'd revealed too much. Then he spun toward the door, slammed it so hard Sarah's photo on the mantel rattled in its frame. The glass stopped trembling eventually. I didn't. The next morning I stood in front of that same photo. Sarah was smiling, her arms around an 8-year-old Tyler in his Little League uniform. I remembered her funeral. Tyler's too big suit, his small hand clutching mine as I held myself together for both of us. I remembered the bills stacked high, the mortgage months behind, the shops barely afloat. And I remembered the promise I whispered at her graveside. "I'll take care of him, Sarah. Whatever it costs. It cost everything." Private school, $40,000 a year. University of Montana tuition, full dorm life, every demand met. The Honda Civic I bought him for graduation because he refused anything used. Thousands poured into his future while I skipped vacations, wore the same boots until the soles peeled. And through it all, his eyes. Even at 16, when I handed him the car keys, something was missing. That spark other kids had, pride in earning something, hunger to work for more. It never showed in Tyler. He learned early that Dad's wallet was easier than lifting a finger. By Saturday night, I sat in Sarah's old rocking chair, the one I never had the heart to throw away. I could almost hear her voice. "You should have pushed him harder. You should have made him stand on his own feet." She was right. I'd spent 20 years buying Tyler's love, confusing provision with parenting. Each check I wrote wasn't for him. It was for me, to silence my guilt, to cover the hole Sarah left. And now, that hole had swallowed my son whole. Sunday morning, the phone rang. Tyler's name glowed on the screen. I answered with a careful, "Hello, son." "Dad. Hey, how are you?" His voice was too bright, too eager, like a salesman's opening line. "I'm fine. Surprised to hear from you." "Yeah, about that. Look, I was way out of line. I want to make it right." The words tumbled too fast, too rehearsed. "Actually, I have a proposal." Silence. My military days had taught me the power of waiting. "Let's go camping," he said. "Just you and me, Glacier National Park, like when I was a kid." The suggestion hit like whiplash. Tyler hadn't cared about the outdoors in years. "This is sudden," I said. "I've already got the permits, the gear, even the flights to Kalispell. My buddies canceled last minute and everything goes to waste if we don't go. 5 days in the backcountry, no distractions, just father and son." His urgency pressed hard, almost scripted. My gut churned. "Tyler, when have you ever organized a camping trip?" "Come on, Dad. Remember when you taught me how to track deer prints in the mud? How to build a fire in the rain? You always said the wild shows a man's true character." The memory stabbed. Those had been good days before Sarah's cancer, before the shops consumed me. "This could be our chance to reconnect," he pressed. "Flights leave March 19th. You in?" Hope and suspicion tore at me. Part of me screamed, "Don't go." But another part, the father who still dreamed his son might change, whispered, "Maybe this is real." "All right," I heard myself say. "Let's do it." "Perfect. Meet me at the airport." When the call ended, I stared at the legal documents spread across my desk. Papers I'd drafted in the quiet after our last fight. A new will, one that cut Tyler out completely. Charities, scholarships, veterans groups, everything Sarah would have wanted. I folded them into my travel bag, just in case. 3 days later, I stood at the gate in Billings Airport. Tyler was already there, bouncing on his heels like a teenager. His backpack looked brand new, tags still swinging from the zippers. "Dad," he grinned too wide, "they're boarding." "You seem excited," I said, studying the twitch in his left eye. "Why wouldn't I be? Father-son adventure?" The flights blurred. Billings to Denver, then north to Kalispell. Tyler filled the silence with chatter about reconnecting, but checked his phone constantly, slipping away for long bathroom breaks that lasted 20 minutes each. By the time we picked up our rental truck, a white Toyota Tacoma with mud-ready tires, the Montana air bit cold, sharp with pine and snow, we stopped at an outfitter where Tyler insisted on buying extra gear, rope, flares, high-powered flashlights, way more than we needed. The clerk, a grizzled old ranger type, raised an eyebrow. "Planning to get lost?" "Just being prepared," Tyler said quickly. Something about the way he said it tightened my chest. We reached Glacier's ranger station by dusk. The ranger, a no-nonsense woman named Kelly Mason, spread a map across the desk. "The North Fork route you're asking about is advanced terrain, remote, 30 miles from the nearest road. You won't see another human all week." "That's what we want," Tyler cut in. Kelly frowned. "Then you'd better be experienced. Wolves are active this season, grizzlies too. Rescue could take 2 days if weather turns." She looked between us. My Navy survival background reassured her some. Tyler mumbled about camping with friends. Her eyes said what she didn't. "Your son has no idea what he's walking into." We signed the waivers, picked up bear-resistant food containers and an emergency beacon. I rented a rifle, a Remington 700, old habits. Out here, going unarmed wasn't an option. As we left, Kelly said, "Be careful. Men underestimate this place all the time. The wilderness doesn't forgive." Her words stuck like burrs. The forest swallowed us whole. Pines towered like cathedral pillars. Snow crunched under our boots as the trail wound deeper into silence. Tyler panted quickly, unused to the weight of his pack. I adjusted his straps. He winced when I touched his shoulder. "You hurt?" "Old injury," he muttered. By dusk, we found a clearing near a stream. I set up camp with practiced efficiency. Food cache high, cooking area downwind, tent lines taut. Tyler fumbled with his tent until I stepped in. That night, the fire flickered between us. I tried conversation. Stories of Montana nights when Sarah was alive. Tyler listened, quiet, his eyes fixed on the flames. Then he asked softly, "Dad, how do you know when someone's lying to you?" I stirred the fire. Body language. Inconsistencies, the small details that don't add up. His face glowed orange in the firelight. Good to know. Later, he volunteered to take first watch, said he wanted to listen to the forest. It was the first time in years he'd shown interest in solitude. I crawled into my tent, exhaustion dragging me under. But before sleep took me, I realized something. The sounds outside had changed. No longer the careless shuffle of someone tending a fire, but the careful stillness of someone waiting. The dawn came cold and brittle. I unzipped my tent and froze. Tyler was at the truck, packing every piece of gear we owned: food, rifle, beacon, even the maps. His movements were sharp, deliberate, almost military. "What are you doing?" I asked. He flinched, then straightened, getting ready to leave. "Leave? We just got here." "Change of plans," he said flatly. "What plans?" He turned, and for the first time, I saw it. Years of resentment unchained, his face twisted with hatred. "You want to know the plan, Dad? I'm done being your puppet, done with your control. You made me weak. You bought my whole damn life, and I let you, but not anymore." "Tyler, don't call me that," he roared. "You're not my father. You're just a dictator keeping me chained. Well, guess what? I'm taking control now." The cold realization spread through me. "You're leaving me here." He smiled, cruel, satisfied. "Very good. 30 miles of wilderness should teach you what it feels like to be powerless. Maybe you survive, maybe you don't. Either way, when you're gone, everything's mine." The truck engine roared to life. I lunged forward, but he reversed fast, gravel spitting. His face in the windshield was calm, calculating. "Try not to meet the grizzlies too quick," he called out. "I want you to have time to think about what you created." Then he was gone. The silence of Glacier closed in around me, vast and merciless. No food, no gear, no map. Just me, the trees, and the knowledge that my only son had sentenced me to die. For a long moment, I stood there, breath steaming in the cold. Then the old training kicked in. Shock was a luxury. I forced my lungs steady, scanning the forest. Assess resources: pocket knife, boots, the clothes on my back. That was it. 30 miles of bear country lay between me and civilization. And survival meant more than beating the wilderness. It meant outsmarting the boy who wanted me dead. If you followed me this far, I'd love to know, where are you listening from? Drop your city in the comments. I want to picture who's out there walking these woods with me. And if this story has gripped you, go ahead and like the video and subscribe for more journeys like this one. Trust me, it's only the beginning. The forest went quiet after the engine's growl faded. Too quiet. No human sound remained. Just the whisper of pine needles shifting in the wind, the faint gurgle of the stream behind me, and somewhere far off, the low, mournful call of a wolf. I stood alone on that dirt road in Glacier National Park, my breath fogging in the cold air, staring at the curve where my son had disappeared with the truck and every scrap of survival gear. Abandoned. Not by accident, not by misfortune, by blood, by my only child. The silence pressed against me until it hurt. Then training cut through the shock. Rule 1. Assess. I patted my pockets. Wallet, house keys, a pocket knife, 3 inches of dull steel, more a habit than a weapon. No food, no water, no rifle, no beacon, no pack. Nothing but what I stood in: boots, jeans, thermal flannel, and a jacket meant for a day hike, not 5 nights in grizzly country. Rule 2. Environment. March in Montana is merciless. Daytime highs crawl into the 30s if you're lucky. Nights plummet below freezing. Snow flurries can roll in without warning. And Glacier wasn't some tourist campground with bathrooms and picnic tables. This was raw wilderness. Wolves, cougars, moose as temperamental as tanks, and of course the grizzlies, gods of this forest. Rule 3. Priorities. Shelter, water, fire, food, signal, navigation, in that order. I swallowed the bitterness of betrayal and forced myself to move. Because in wilderness, hesitation kills. The dirt road stretched west, tire tracks still fresh where the Tacoma had rolled. But following those meant chasing a ghost. No one was coming back for me that way. I turned into the tree line. The snow muffled my steps as I followed a narrow animal trail. Game paths almost always lead to water, and water means life. The forest closed around me like a cathedral. Pines stretched 100 feet high, their needles dripping meltwater onto my shoulders. The air smelled of resin and damp earth. Every sound was magnified: the crack of a branch, the flutter of wings, my own ragged breathing. After 20 minutes I found it, a narrow creek cutting through the snow. Clear, fast-moving, no signs of contamination. I knelt, cupped the icy water in my hands, and drank until my throat burned. Hydration, secured, but cold water alone wouldn't keep me alive. I gathered dry pine needles, snapped dead twigs from low branches, and built a nest. My lighter was gone with the gear. All I had was friction and luck. I searched until I found a downed birch, scraped away curls of its bark, nature's gasoline. I set my knife against a cedar branch, worked the spine like a saw against stone until sparks flew. It took 40 minutes, maybe more. My hands went numb, my breath smoked out in frustrated bursts. But eventually, a spark caught the birch bark. A flicker, a glow, fire. The flames licked upward, greedy, alive. I fed it slowly, twigs, then branches, until the smoke twisted high into the trees. My body trembled with relief as heat pressed against my palms. For the first time since Tyler's betrayal, I believed I might live through the night. But survival wasn't just about warmth. It was about clarity, and clarity came with memory. I saw Tyler's face as he slammed the tailgate shut, his voice echoing, "Maybe you'll survive. Maybe you won't. Either way, I'll inherit what should have been mine." That wasn't just anger. That was calculation. Years in the making. Every allowance, every car, every tuition bill. I had bought him piece by piece, thinking I was shaping a future. Instead, I'd carved a man who measured my worth in inheritance. I stared into the fire, rage and regret tangling until they were indistinguishable. And I made a vow, there in the cold Montana night. If I survived this, I wouldn't just come back. I would come back changed. And Tyler would finally face the weight of what he had done. The night stretched long. Wolves howled in the distance, not close, not yet. An owl screeched from somewhere overhead. I kept the fire strong, feeding it with deadfall, the smoke curling into the star-punched sky. Every crack in the darkness tightened my grip on the knife. Sometime near dawn, exhaustion dragged me under. I slept curled beside the flames, boots still on, jacket pulled tight. When I woke, the fire had dwindled to glowing embers. My muscles ached, my breath fogged white. The world was ice and silence. Time to move. I followed the creek downstream, reasoning it would lead toward the park boundary, maybe even a ranger trail. My boots slipped on frosted rocks. My stomach knotted with hunger. Every step reminded me how little I had left in me. Midday, I found tracks. Not human. Moose. Fresh. The prints were deep, the size of dinner plates. I froze. Moose kill more people here than bears do. Territorial, unpredictable, fast as hell. I scanned the trees, heart hammering. Nothing. Not yet. I pressed on, quieter now, ears straining. Then I heard it. An engine. At first I thought I'd imagined it. A low, mechanical growl, steady, rhythmic. Not a plane, too close. Not a truck, too rough. ATVs. I broke into a run, crashing through underbrush, branches whipping my face. The sound grew louder until, through the trees, I saw them. 4 riders parked in a clearing, helmets off, lunch spread across a cooler. I stumbled into the open, ragged, wild-eyed smoke still in my hair from the fire. "Help!" My voice cracked. "My son! He left me. He took everything. He left me to die out here." The riders froze, shock written on their faces. One man, late 40s, weathered skin and sharp eyes, stepped forward. Jesus, sit down. Tell us what happened. My name's Daniel Cole, I rasped. My son, Tyler. He brought me here on a camping trip. Then he packed the truck, took the gear, and left me 30 miles out. Said I should go meet the grizzly. The man's jaw tightened. That's attempted murder. He removed his helmet, extended a hand. I'm Jack Morris. Used to be a ranger here, and you're lucky we came this route. Nobody else comes out this far in March. One of the women handed me a water bottle. Another dug jerky out of a pack. I devoured both like a starving man. Jack crouched beside me. When did he leave you? Yesterday morning. He's driving the rental back now, thinking I'm dead. Jack exchanged a look with his friends. Then we've got time. There's an old ranger trail, shortcut back to the park road. We can beat him there in under 2 hours. The fire in my chest reignited. You mean I could be waiting for him? Jack nodded slowly. You want justice, or you want revenge? I looked at the tree line, the snow, the endless wilderness my son thought would bury me. I want him to see what he created, I said. Jack's eyes narrowed with understanding. Then climb on. Let's go make sure your son learns what survival really means. The ATVs roared to life, chewing through mud and snow. I clung to Jack's back as he gunned the machine down a hidden trail, the forest whipping past in blurs of green and white. Hope surged with every mile, hope and something darker. Tyler thought he'd buried me in Glacier. Instead, he'd forged the weapon that would destroy him. The old ranger trail twisted like a scar through Glacier's backcountry. Jack rode hard, his ATV tearing through mud and ice, and I clung to the back with every ounce of strength left in me. Pine trees blurred, cold air cut my face raw. For the first time since Tyler left me to die, I felt movement. Forward, purposeful, alive. It was strange. My son had tried to bury me in silence, but the roar of that engine sounded like resurrection. We pushed through for over an hour. Creek crossings, steep climbs, stretches where we had to dismount and drag the machines around fallen trees. The forest fought us, but Jack fought harder. His friends, 2 men, 1 woman, moved with practiced ease, like a unit that had done this before. When the trail finally spat us out onto asphalt, the sudden smoothness felt unreal. Civilization, pavement, tire marks, a lifeline I thought I'd never see again. Another 30 minutes, Jack shouted over the engine, and we'll be at the lodge. I tightened my grip. 30 minutes. 30 minutes to get back before Tyler. 30 minutes to transform from victim into something else entirely. The Denali Lodge Motel, rustic log siding, neon vacancy sign buzzing faintly against the early evening sky, looked like salvation carved out of the Montana wilderness. We parked the ATVs out back. I swung stiff legs off the machine, knees nearly buckling. My body was wrecked, hungry, dehydrated, every muscle trembling. But my mind was sharp, sharper than it had been in years. Inside, the motel smelled of coffee and wood smoke. An elderly woman at the front desk looked up with wide eyes as I walked in, scratched and smoke-stained. Good Lord, you need a doctor? Later, I rasped. Right now I need a room and a phone. Her gaze flicked to Jack, who gave her a subtle nod. She slid a key across the counter. Room 7, coffee's fresh in the pot. I carried the key like a weapon. The room was small, wood-paneled walls, a single bed, a desk pushed against the window. I shut the door behind me, locked it, and sat on the edge of the mattress. My reflection in the mirror startled me. Wild eyes, scruffed beard, dirt streaked across my face. This was the man my son thought he could erase. I pulled the folded papers from my jacket pocket. The will. I spread it on the desk under the yellow lamp, the ink sharp and final. Tyler Cole, disinherited. Every cent redirected. Veterans charities, scholarships in Sarah's name, wildlife conservation. 3 weeks ago I'd signed it in anger. Now it felt like prophecy. My son had come to Montana for a payday. Instead, he'd walk into a trap, already sealed in legal ink. I sat there for a long while, listening to the quiet hum of the motel heater, the occasional car passing on the highway. My pen hovered over the documents. I wanted to write a note, something final, something that told Sarah I'd done everything I could, but the words refused to come. Instead, I called my attorney in Billings. "Walter, it's Daniel. File the will, immediately. No delays." He hesitated. "You sure? Once it's filed, there's no going back." I've never been more sure in my life. At 8:30 sharp, Jack knocked on my door. He carried a duffel bag that clinked softly when he said it. "I figured you'd want options," he said. He unzipped it, revealing a DSLR camera, audio recorders, spare batteries. My throat tightened. "You're willing to help me?" Jack leaned against the dresser, arms crossed. "I was a ranger 15 years, seen men make dumb choices in these woods. But leaving your own father to die?" His jaw flexed. "That crosses a line." He placed the camera by the window, adjusted the angle until it covered the room, checked the mic level. Every move calm, practiced, deliberate. "When he walks through that door," Jack said, "we'll have it all on tape." I nodded, my stomach a knot of dread and resolve. By 9, the lodge had gone quiet. Through the thin curtains, I watched headlights sweep the parking lot. The sound of an engine I knew too well, the Tacoma's, echoed through the night. My pulse spiked. He was back. I forced myself into the chair by the desk, the will spread clearly in front of me, my hands folded, steady despite the storm in my chest. The key scraped in the lock. Twice, fumbling. Then the door opened. Tyler stepped in, shoulders squared, a rehearsed look of shock plastered across his face. "Dad?" His voice cracked. How are you here?" I smiled. Not warm, not forgiving, but sharp. "Turns out I'm harder to kill than you thought." His jaw dropped. He froze in the doorway, backpack slipping from his shoulder. For the first time in his life, I saw him speechless. "Sit down, son," I said quietly. "We need to talk about inheritance." The door clicked shut behind him, and for the first time since Glacier's shadows swallowed me, I had my son in front of me again. Only this time, I wasn't the man he left behind. Tyler's eyes darted around the room, flicking to the desk, the will papers spread like a trap, then back to me. He looked pale in a way I'd never... "Dad," he whispered, voice cracking. "How are you here? I left you..." He stopped himself, realizing the slip. "I mean, I thought you were... dead?" I finished for him. My voice sounded colder than I intended, but maybe that was the point. "You thought wrong." He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. His hand tightened on the doorknob like he might bolt. I leaned forward just slightly. "You should sit, Tyler. We've got things to clear up." For a moment, then, reluctantly, he crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. His sneakers squeaked against the laminate floor. His breathing was too fast. The air between us buzzed. Behind the adjoining wall, I knew Jack's equipment was recording every sound. I leaned back in the chair, folding my arms across my chest. "You had a plan, didn't you?" He flinched, his lips parting. Then the act came back. That fake earnestness I knew too well. "Dad, you don't understand. I panicked. Things got out of control. I didn't mean to..." "Stop." The word came out sharper than a whip crack. His mouth shut instantly. "I survived the Navy," I said slowly, my eyes locked on his. "I survived 20 years of breaking my body to build a business from nothing. And I survived one night alone in Glacier, with nothing but a pocket knife. Don't insult me by pretending this was an accident." His jaw worked. Silence stretched. Then the mask slipped. "You made me do it." The words hung heavy in the room. He leaned forward, eyes burning. "You controlled every dollar, every decision. You held my whole life hostage. I'm 27 years old, and I've never had a chance to breathe without your leash around my neck. You created this, Dad." I forced my breathing steady, though inside his words sliced deep. "You wanted my death," I said quietly. "I wanted my life," he snapped, fists clenching. "And the only way to get it was after you were gone. Do you even realize what it feels like? Knowing your future depends on the day your father finally kicks the bucket? You're 27 years old, and I've never had a chance to breathe without your leash around my neck. You created this, Dad." I forced my breathing steady, though inside his words sliced deep. "You wanted my life," he said quietly. "I wanted my life," The venom in his voice filled the room. He wasn't even ashamed anymore. I picked up the will from the desk and held it where he could see. That future you're counting on? It doesn't exist. His eyes narrowed. What's that? Your inheritance. I tapped the paper. Filed 3 weeks ago. You get nothing. Not the shops. Not the accounts. Not even the house your mother loved. It all goes to charity. Scholarships, veterans funds, wildlife conservation. The blood drained from his face. You can't do that. I already did. He stood so quickly the bed creaked. You're lying. You wouldn't. Sit down. The command slipped out like it had in the service, sharp, final, and for a moment, unbelievably, he obeyed. He sat back down, shoulders heaving, his face twisted with rage and something else. Tyler, I said, my voice lower now, steadier. You've spent years blaming me, blaming Sarah's death, blaming money, blaming everything but yourself. But this, I pointed toward the door, toward the forest he'd abandoned me in. This was your choice, not mine. You chose murder. His voice cracked. You pushed me there. No, I said. I carried you. And in doing so, I crippled you. But I didn't push you into betrayal. That was all yours. His hands trembled. So what now? You gonna call the cops? Ruin my life? I stood slowly, sliding the will back into the folder. No, Tyler, you ruined your own life the moment you left me in those woods. I walked toward the door. He lurched to his feet. Dad, wait. I paused, hand on the knob, and turned just enough to meet his eyes. Goodbye, son. The word son left my mouth heavy with finality. His face crumpled, not in remorse, but in desperation. His lips parted as if to bar, but I opened the door before he could speak. And when I stepped into the night air, Jack was waiting in the shadows, camera lights still glowing red. I didn't look back, but I knew, for the first time, Tyler realized the wilderness hadn't buried me. It had forged me into something he could never defeat. The Montana night was cold enough to sting the lungs, but I barely felt it. My body had gone numb, not from the wilderness, but from what I had just witnessed inside room 7. For 27 years, I had carried Tyler on my shoulders. I gave him comfort, privilege, every tool to make something of himself. And now I had heard him say, without hesitation, that my death was the only way he could breathe. There was no repair, no turning back. Jack stood in the shadows, his camera bag slung over one shoulder, the red recording light still faintly glowing. His face was hard, like carved oak. You got what you needed, he said. I nodded once. My throat felt. Let's make it official. The Kalispell police station looked like something out of an old movie. Brick exterior, a single American flag fluttering under a street lamp, the faint buzz of neon letters. Inside, the place smelled of stale coffee and paperwork. Detective Maria Torres met me in a narrow interview room. She was mid-40s, sharp-eyed, hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun. Her badge gleamed against a dark. She had the kind of presence that filled the room before she even sat down. Mr. Cole, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. You've had quite an ordeal. I want to go over this carefully so there are no gaps. Start from the beginning. So I told her. Everything. The storming into my office back in Billings. The fight over money. His sudden invitation to Glacier. The lies, the gear, the drive into the wilderness. His cold farewell. Go meet the... and the silence that followed. I told her about the creek, the fire, the game trail, about the engine sounds and Jack's team pulling me from the edge of death, about the shortcut that let me return before Tyler. When I described the confrontation in the motel room, I slid the will across the table. Torres studied the signatures, the notarization stamp, the language cutting Tyler out completely. Then Jack placed his camera on the table. He pressed. Tyler's voice filled the room, bitter, venomous, undeniable. You made me do it. I wanted my life. The only way to get it was after you were gone. The detective sat very still, hands folded. Her jaw flexed once. When the recording ended, silence pressed in thick. Finally, she said, This is one of the most premeditated acts of abandonment I've ever heard. She leaned forward, eyes locking with mine. Mr. Cole, this isn't just neglect. This is attempted. The words hung like frost in the air. Attempted murder. Hearing it aloud made my stomach twist. Tyler wasn't just a bitter son anymore. He was a criminal. An officer opened the door, murmured something to Torres. She nodded. They brought him in, she told me. Picked him up in the lodge parking lot. He was heading back to the truck, probably to cover his story before anyone noticed. My heart thudded. Can I see him? She hesitated. That's unusual, but given the circumstances, I'll allow it. Briefly, through a glass pane I saw him. Tyler Cole, my son, my betrayer. He sat at a metal desk, hands cuffed, hoodie hanging loose around his shoulders. His hair was messy, his eyes wild. For the first time in his life, he didn't look entitled. He looked small. A uniformed officer slid a form across the desk in front of him. Tyler barely glanced at it. His lips moved, excuses, bargains, the same old rhythm I'd heard since he was a teenager. But nobody in that room was. For a long moment, I simply watched. My chest ached, but not with love. With finality. Torres stood beside me. He'll be charged in the morning. Attempted murder in the first degree, reckless endangerment, fraud. The DA will have no trouble making this stick. I nodded, eyes still locked on him. She tilted her head. Do you want to speak with him? The question cut me open. Did I? Part of me wanted to shout, to demand why he'd chosen greed. Another part wanted to turn and walk out, leave him to rot in the cage he'd built. But what I wanted most was clarity. Yes, I said. The interview room was cold, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. An officer guided me inside, then shut the door behind me. Tyler looked up, his eyes widened. Dad. The word hit me different now, like a weapon instead of an embrace. Don't, I said. He flinched. We sat across from each other. A steel table separated us, but it might as well have been years of lies and failure. You were supposed to be dead, he whispered. I was supposed to be your father, I answered. We both failed. His lips trembled. You don't understand. I couldn't live like that anymore. Dependent, trapped, waiting for scraps while you played king of your little empire. I leaned forward. So you chose murder. I chose freedom, he snapped, then sagged back, breathing hard. You made me weak. You never let me stand on my own. And when I realized the only way out was... He stopped, pressing his lips together, but the damage was done. The only way out was my death. I finished for him. He stared at the floor. I want you to listen carefully, I said, voice low. There is no inheritance, not a cent. You abandoned me for nothing. You tried to kill me for nothing. And when you sit in that courtroom, every word you just said will follow you. His head snapped up. Panic. You can't. I already did. Silence stretched. Finally, he whispered, You're not my father anymore. The words should have broken me. Instead, they freed me. I stood, pushed the chair back under the table. No, I said, turning toward the door. You're right. I'm not. I left him there, chained to a desk under buzzing fluorescent lights, the weight of his choices pressing down like a second set of handcuffs. Torres met me outside. That's enough for tonight. We'll handle the rest. You should get some rest yourself. Rest. The word felt foreign, but as I stepped into the Montana night, the stars sharp and cold above me, I realized I wasn't carrying Tyler anymore. For the first time in 27 years, my shoulders were my own. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and old paper. That faint, almost metallic tang of ink and dust, mixed with the sweetness of floor wax. I never thought I'd be here. Not as a witness, not as a father, but there I was, seated at the prosecution's table, staring across the aisle at the man in shackles who once fit in the crook of my arm. My son. Tyler sat stiff, his wrists chained together, an orange jumpsuit hanging awkwardly on his frame. His hair was longer now, unkempt. He looked thinner than I remembered, but his eyes, Those same blue eyes Sarah gave him, flicked with defiance every time they found mine. It had been 3 weeks since 3 weeks since the woods tried to swallow me whole and Tyler handed them the spoon. 3 weeks since I saw my boy for what he truly was. Not lost, not misguided, but deliberate in his cruelty. And yet my chest still ached when I looked at him. A father's love doesn't just die, it lingers like a ghost. The district attorney was a tall man named Patrick Rowe. Clean suit, square jaw, the kind of presence that made juries lean. He'd prepped me for days. Every detail, every possible cross-examination, every memory Tyler's lawyer might drag out to make me waver. But the truth was simple. My son abandoned me in Glacier National Park, fully intending for me to die. Rowe leaned close now, his voice a low rumble. "You ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. He gave a curt nod. When the judge entered, a stern woman in her 60s with glasses perched low on her nose, the courtroom rose. The gavel cracked once, sharp as a rifle shot. "State of Montana versus Tyler Cole," she announced. The words rang through my bones. The prosecution went first. They painted the story carefully. The argument in Billings, the sudden camping trip, the remote wilderness, the deliberate abandonment. They played the recordings Jack had captured at the motel. Tyler's own voice, bitter and venomous, confessing without knowing he was being watched. The jury's faces shifted as they listened. Some leaned forward, some frowned. One woman covered her mouth with her hand. I sat there, heart hammering, knowing those words weren't just evidence. They were the nails in my son's coffin. When it was my turn to testify, my legs felt heavy as I walked to the stand. The clerk held out a Bible. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." The wood of the witness stand felt solid beneath my palms, grounding me. Rowe's voice was calm. "Cole, please tell the jury what happened in Glacier National Park." So I did. I told them about the drive, the gear, the lies, about Tyler's face when he said, "Go meet the grizzly," about the silence of the forest pressing in, the fire I struggled to build, the howl of wolves in the distance, about the ATVs, about Jack, about the return to the lodge, and finally about the confrontation in room 7. Rowe handed me the will. I held it up, let the jury see my... 3 weeks before Glacier, I disinherited my son, I said. Everything goes to charity. He didn't know that when he left me to die. He thought killing me meant payday. In reality, it meant nothing. I caught Tyler's eyes across the room. For the first time, I saw a flicker of panic. Rowe nodded. "No further questions?" Then came the defense. Tyler's lawyer, a wiry man with slicked back hair, rose and paced slowly in front of the jury. "Cole," he began smoothly, "you're a Navy veteran, correct? Trained in survival?" "Yes. You've spent your life overcoming impossible odds. You're a man who thrives in hostile environments." "I've survived them," I said carefully. "Exactly. Isn't it true, then, that you were never really in danger? That your son left you temporarily, but knew you'd be fine?" My jaw clenched. "No. He stripped me of food, water, and gear. In Glacier, that's a death sentence." The lawyer tilted his head. "Or maybe it was a test? A push to toughen you both. Haven't you admitted you raised him with too much comfort, too much money? Maybe he thought this was a way to reset things." The words twisted in my gut. Part of me wanted to believe it, wanted to grasp at any explanation that painted my son as reckless instead of murderous. But the truth was harder, sharper. I leaned forward, eyes fixed on... If that was a test, then why did he tell me to go meet the grizzly? Why did he pack every piece of survival gear into the truck? Why did he say in his own words, the only way to live was after I was gone? The lawyer froze. The courtroom was silent. I let the words hang. Let the jury feel the weight. Finally, the lawyer cleared his throat. No further questions. When I stepped down from the stand, my knees, not from fear of cross-examination, but from the weight of what I'd just done. I'd put my own son on the path to prison. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if survival felt like victory anymore. That night, back in the motel, I couldn't sleep. The heater hummed. Snow tapped against the window. I pulled out Sarah's photo, the one from Tyler's Little League game, her arms wrapped around him, both smiling at the camera. She would have known what to do. She always did. She'd have pushed Tyler harder, demanded more of him, refused to let him drown in handouts. I whispered to the photo, "I failed you. I failed him. And now all I can do is watch as the state takes him away." The silence gave no answers. The next morning, as I walked back into the courthouse, a reporter shoved a microphone toward me. "Mr. Cole, do you want your son to go to prison?" I froze. The cameras flashed. Did I? The honest answer clawed at me. I didn't know, but I knew one thing. Prison or not, nothing could undo the wilderness. Nothing could undo the moment he looked me in the eye and chose greed over blood. So I said the only truth I could. "I want justice," I told them. "Whatever that looks like." And I walked inside, leaving their questions in the cold Montana air. The trial stretched on for 4 days, but it felt like years pressed into a single breath I couldn't release. Witnesses, rangers described the dangers of Glacier in March, how being stripped of gear was the same as being stripped of life. Jack Morris testified about pulling me out of the woods, about my condition, about the shortcut that delivered me back before Tyler. The jury listened, silent, stern, their faces tight as fence wire. Tyler sat across the room, sometimes staring me down, sometimes refusing to meet my eye. He shifted between smirks and slumps. The boy he used to be flickering against the man he had chosen to become. And all the while I sat there, my stomach twisting tighter, wondering if survival meant watching my son's life collapse in slow motion. Closing arguments. Patrick Rowe's voice rang strong in the courtroom. "This isn't a case of immaturity. This isn't a camping accident gone wrong. This is deliberate. This man, Tyler Cole, invited his father on a trip designed. He stripped him of food, of shelter, of means. He left him to bears and cold and hunger, knowing it meant one outcome. He wanted inheritance, he wanted freedom, and he was willing to buy it with blood. He let the words hang, heavy as stones. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this was attempted murder, pure and simple. The defense lawyer tried to spin desperation, tried to paint Tyler as a victim of controlling parent. He pointed to me, called me strict, unyielding, military to the bone. But then he pressed play on Jack's recording, and the jury heard Tyler's own voice once again. "The only way to live was after you were gone." No spin could erase that. When the judge dismissed us for deliberation, the jury filed out with expressions carved from granite. The room emptied into silence. I sat there, staring at my hands. My knuckles still bore faint scars from years of wrench work in the autumn. I used to joke with Sarah that the grease never left, that the stains were permanent. And now, staring at them, I wondered if guilt was the same. Had I stained Tyler with my own hands? With my choices? I remembered nights holding him through fevers, mornings racing to school, afternoons on the bleachers watching him strike out again and again. I remembered Sarah's last words. "Promise me you'll give him everything." I did. God help me. And now, everything sat in chains, waiting for a jury to decide if his next decade would be behind bars. The wait lasted 5 hours. 5 hours of pacing courthouse hallways, drinking bad coffee from vending machines, staring out windows at the snow that never seemed to stop falling. Jack sat with me through most of it. He didn't speak much, just his presence steady beside me. At one point he said quietly, "You did what you had to do." I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. The buzzer rang. Jury had reached a verdict. My chest clenched. My legs carried me back into the courtroom on autopilot. The jurors filed in, their faces unreadable. The foreman stood, paper in hand. "In the case of the state of Montana versus Tyler Cole," his voice shook only slightly, "we, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all counts." The words slammed into me like a physical blow. Guilty. Tyler's head snapped up. His mouth opened like he was about to shout, but nothing came. He slumped back into his chair, eyes wide, sweat beading on his forehead. My own chest tightened until it hurt. I should have felt vindication, relief, triumph, but all I felt was the hollow echo of finality. The gavel cracked once. "Sentencing in 30 days, the judge announced, and just like that, it was over. 30 days. That night, I sat alone in the motel, the silence so loud it was almost unbearable. I couldn't shake the image of Tyler's face when he heard the word guilt. He looked like the boy who used to cry when his bike chain slipped off, running to me with grease on his hands, begging me to fix it. But he wasn't that boy anymore. He was a man who left me in bear country to die. The contradiction tore at me until my head ached. The phone rang. Detective Torres. "Mr. Cole, you'll be asked to give a victim impact statement at sentencing. The court will weigh your words heavily. You should start preparing." My throat, "And if I ask for leniency?" "That's your right," she said gently. "But the charges are severe. Attempted murder isn't something a judge takes lightly." I hung up and sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Leniency, justice, revenge. What did I want? I had no answer. Over the next weeks, letters began to arrive. The first was from Tyler, 5 pages, half apology, half manipulation. I wasn't myself. I was desperate. "If you forgive me, maybe the judge will too. You could help. You owe me that much." I read it once, then shoved it into the bottom of a drawer. The second letter came from Sarah's sister in Wyoming. She'd heard whispers about the trial. "I don't know what to say," she wrote. "I can't imagine the pain. But remember, justice isn't revenge. It's accountability." That one I read 3 times. The third came from Walter, my attorney. He'd filed the will officially. Tyler was legally cut out, every penny redirected. "You've protected your legacy. Now the rest is up to the courts." Protected. The word felt heavy. My legacy wasn't shops or bank accounts. It was Tyler, and that I hadn't protected at all. The 30 days crawled by. Each night I sat with Sarah's photo, rehearsing words I didn't yet believe. What could I say to a judge? Lock him away? Spare him? Neither fit in my mouth. One night I dreamed of Glacier. I was back at the fire, smoke rising into the dark. Only this time Tyler sat across from me. His face was younger, 10, maybe 11. He was roasting marshmallows, grinning when they caught fire, laughing like he used to. Then the fire went out, and I woke in darkness, my chest heaving, my pillow damp with sweat. By the time sentencing day arrived, I felt hollowed out, like a log eaten through by termites. The courthouse was colder this time. Or maybe I was. Tyler was led in wearing shackles. He didn't look at me, not once. The judge began the legal jargon, dates, statutes. My ears barely registered the words. Then she said, "Mr. Cole, would you like to make a statement?" The room turned toward me. I stood, legs trembling, and walked to the podium. My palms were slick, my mouth dry. I looked at the judge, then at the jury box, then finally at my son. He was staring at the table, jaw tight, refusing to meet my eyes. My throat burned. My voice shook. "Your Honor," I began. "I never imagined I'd be here. Not like this. My son!" My voice cracked. I forced myself to go on. "My son left me in Glacier to die. That's the truth. And I survived, but not without scars. Not just on my body, on my heart, on my faith in family." The courtroom was silent, every ear straining. But I also know this. I played my part in creating him. I gave him everything except the one thing he needed, accountability. I thought money would fill the hole Sarah left. It didn't. It hollowed him out. And now we're both paying the price. I swallowed hard. I can't ask you to forgive him. That's not my place. But I also can't stand here and ask you to throw him away like he tried to throw me away. All I ask is this: whatever sentence you give, let it be one that forces him to face what he did. To face himself. That's the only justice I want. My legs nearly buckled as I stepped back from the podium. The judge's eyes softened just slightly. Then she turned to Tyler. "Cole, do you wish to speak before sentencing?" He finally looked up. His voice was hoarse. I don't know what to say. He's right. I ruined everything. It wasn't apology. It wasn't remorse. It was exhaustion. The judge nodded once. Then she lifted her gavel. The gavel came down like thunder. Tyler Cole, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in the Montana State Prison, with the possibility of parole after 18. The words rang through the courtroom, hard. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. No coughs, no shuffling papers, just silence, so heavy I could feel it pressing against my ribs. Then I heard the sound, chains rattling as Tyler shifted in his seat. His head snapped toward me, eyes wide, wild. 25 years? His voice cracked like a boy's. Dad, do something. Tell them. You can fix this. I didn't move. He strained against the cuffs, face red, spittle on. You can't let this happen. You're my father. The bailiffs stepped in, firm hands on his shoulders, guiding him down. He jerked, twisted, fought, but they held him fast, and I just sat there, my hands clasped so tight my knuckles went white, watching the boy I had raised dragged out of the room. Not a boy anymore, not my boy anymore. A convict. The judge's gavel cracked again. Order. This court is adjourned. The crowd rose. Lawyers gathered their papers. Reporters scribbled, but I stayed seated, staring at the empty chair Tyler had left behind. I'd thought the verdict was the end. It wasn't. The end was this. The sound of chains dragging across tile. The sight of my son disappearing through a door I couldn't follow. Jack found me in the hallway afterward. His hand landed heavy on my shoulder. You all right? I shook my head. No. He didn't push. Just walked beside me out into the Montana air. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed like vultures. Microphones, cameras, questions shouted over one another. Mr. Cole, do you think justice was served? Do you have anything to say to your son? Do you regret testifying? I pushed through them, ignoring the flashes, but one question snagged me like barbed wire. Mr. Cole, a young reporter yelled, what will you do with the rest of your life now that your son is gone? I froze. What would I do? The microphones pressed closer. I cleared my I'll spend it making sure what he tried to kill me for goes to people who actually deserve it. Then I walked on. That night, the motel room felt smaller than ever. I sat in Sarah's old rocking chair. I'd brought it back from the house after the trial began, needing a piece of her with me. The wood creaked under my weight, familiar, grounding. I pulled out the folder with the will. Read through it again, every line, every clause. The scholarships, the charities, the veteran. It wasn't just money anymore. It was defiance. It was redemption. It was the only way to make meaning out of what Tyler had destroyed. I whispered to Sarah's photo on the desk. He's gone, but maybe, just maybe, something good can come out of it. The silence didn't answer, but I felt lighter saying it. The weeks after sentencing blurred. Reporters kept calling. Old friends reached out with sympathy I didn't know how to. At the shops, the guys watched me carefully, like I was fragile glass that might crack. I wasn't fragile. I was just empty. Every time the phone rang with Montana Department of Corrections on the ID, I let it go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear Tyler's voice from a prison phone, begging or raging. One letter made it through anyway. It was short, just 3 sentences scrawled in jagged handwriting. You were supposed to protect me. Instead, you destroyed me. I'll never forgive you. I fed it through the shredder. The sound of the blades chewing it up was louder than it should have been, like a mechanical scream. And then it was gone. Months passed. The snow melted, spring pushing green through the Montana soil. Tourists returned to Glacier, snapping photos where wolves still roamed and grizzlies still stalked. Sometimes I drove out there, parked at the trailhead, walked just far enough into the trees to hear the silence again, the silence that almost became my grave, and I stood there, breathing it in, reminding myself that survival wasn't just a moment, it was a choice, every day. One afternoon, I sat in my office, invoices spread across the desk. A young mechanic named Chris poked his head in, barely 20, grease on his cheeks, the kind of hungry eyes I used to have. Mr. Cole, he asked. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why do you still work? I mean, you don't need the money, right? I leaned back, because work is what saved me, I said finally. And maybe it can save someone else. He frowned. Someone else? I tapped the scholarship forms waiting on my desk. There are kids out there who want to learn this trade, who don't have anyone to help. I'm going to change that. His eyebrows lifted. That's pretty amazing, sir. I smiled faintly. It's necessary. That night I opened a new... On the first page I wrote one sentence in careful, deliberate ink. He tried to kill me for inheritance, so I'll spend it building a future he can never touch. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I knew what tomorrow looked like. Time has a strange way of moving after you watch your son sentenced to prison. The first days crawled like wounded animals, every second sharp, then weeks passed in a blur. Paperwork, reporters, awkward handshakes from men who didn't know what to say. Before I knew it, months had folded into years, each one pulling me further from Glacier, yet never letting me forget it. I didn't die in the wilderness, but a part of me stayed buried there. 3 years after the sentencing, I sat at a long oak table in Helena, Montana. The room smelled of fresh paint and new carpet. Around me, half a dozen people flipped through binders with the logo stamped on the cover. The Sarah Cole Foundation for Opportunity. It had taken nearly everything I owned to build it, the shop sold, investments liquidated, every cent redirected. But it was alive now. Scholarships for young mechanics, grants for veterans learning trades, funds for kids who wanted to work with their hands instead of begging for handouts. As the board debated applications, I drifted, my mind tugged backward. I thought of Sarah, how she'd stand in the garage doorway when I came home late, grease on my arms, exhaustion in my bones. She'd smile anyway, hand me a plate of reheated dinner. She believed in sweat, in grit, in doing the work yourself. This foundation was hers, not mine. I signed the final papers, the board clapped politely, and something in me loosened. For the first time since Glacier, I felt like I'd built something that couldn't be corrupted. Tyler never left my life entirely. The letters kept coming. Some angry, some pitiful, some manipulative. You ruined me, Dad. I could change if you'd help me. You'll die alone, and I'll still be your son. At first, I shredded them without reading. Then I started saving them in a box in my garage, each envelope stacked like gravestones. I told myself I wasn't keeping them for him. I was keeping them for me. A reminder of the line we'd crossed, of the wilderness we could never return from. The phone calls came too. Recorded voices. This is a collect call from Montana State Prison. Do you accept the charges? I always hung up. But sometimes at night, I dreamed of him. Not the man in chains. The boy. 7 years old, grass stains on his knees, beaming as he held up the baseball bat I'd saved 2 months' wages to buy. Watch me, Dad, he'd shouted before swinging too hard, the ball dribbling into the dirt, his grin never fading. I'd wake in the dark, the echo of that grin fading like smoke, and wonder where exactly the path split, where he stopped being that boy and started being the man who told me to meet the grizzly. 5 years passed, then 6. The foundation grew. Kids from towns across Montana sent thank you letters, photos of them in classrooms, in garages, in welding shops. One boy, barely 18, wrote, "Nobody believed in me, sir, but your scholarship did. I won't waste it." I pinned that one above my desk. Every time I read it, I felt Sarah in the room. And every time, I wondered if Tyler saw the irony. He had tried to kill me for money, and that very money was now lifting strangers into the lives he thought he deserved. Then one morning a letter arrived with a prison stamp, different from the rest. The handwriting wasn't jagged, it was steady, almost careful. Dad, I've been in here 6 years. I've fought. I've cursed. I've hated you. But lately I've started thinking about Mom, about what she would say if she saw me in here. I know you don't believe me, but I'm not the same man anymore. I can't be. Prison doesn't let you stay the same. If you could see me now, maybe you'd forgive me. Maybe you'd believe I've changed. If you don't, I understand. But I had to try. Signed, your son. I read it 3 times. My hands trembled. For the first time, it didn't sound like manipulation. It sounded like a man staring into the mirror and hating what he saw. I sat in Sarah's rocking chair that night, the letter open in my lap. The wind rattled the windows, the house quiet around me. I whispered into the stillness, "What do I do, Sarah?" The silence gave no answer. Only the groan of the chair, back and forth, back and forth. Weeks later, I drove to Deer Lodge, Montana State Prison. The gates loomed tall, razor wire gleaming under the sun. A guard checked my ID, gave me a badge, led me down hallways that smelled of bleach and sweat. Finally, they opened a heavy steel door. Inside, a table, 2 chairs, a pane of glass on one wall where officers could watch. Tyler sat waiting. Orange jumpsuit, older now, lines etched deeper in his face. But his eyes, still Sarah's. He looked up when I entered. For the first time in years, his voice was small. "Dad." I sat slowly, the chair cold beneath me. "I read your letter," I said. His throat bobbed. "Did you believe it?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Because in that moment, I wasn't sure if forgiveness was survival or betrayal all over again. The steel door closed behind me with a sound like finality. Tyler sat across the table, hands cuffed, eyes fixed on me. For 6 years I'd avoided this room, avoided this man. And now here we were. The father who survived, the son who destroyed, bound together by blood and betrayal. His voice was low, tentative. "Dad?" I let the word hang in the air. It used to mean warmth. Now it felt foreign, heavy. "I read your letter," I said finally. His shoulders lifted, then sagged. "Did you believe it?" I leaned forward, elbows on the table. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and metal. "I believe you wrote it," I said. "I don't know if I believe the man who wrote it." He flinched like I'd struck him. "People change in here," he whispered. "You don't have a choice. You fight or you think." I fought for years. Now I think. I think about what I did. To you, to Mom's memory, to myself. His voice cracked. I hate who I was. I studied him. His face had aged, not with time alone, but with consequence. "You hated me enough to leave me in Glacier," I said. "You told me to meet the grizzly." His eyes filled with tears. I know. The silence between us was thick, the kind that could crush a man if he let it. Finally, I said, "Do you know what saved me?" He shook his head. "Strangers, a ranger and his friends, people who owed me nothing. They saved me because they believed life mattered, even mine. That's what made the difference. Not blood, not inheritance, not family. Strangers." His tears spilled. "I'm sorry. I wanted those words for years. I wanted them the day he slammed my door in Billings. I wanted them the morning he drove away in that Tacoma. I wanted them in the courtroom when the verdict rang out. Now, finally, they were here, and they felt hollow." I leaned back. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Tyler." He sobbed, shoulders shaking. "But I'm not here to forgive," I continued. "I'm here to tell you this. You don't get to define me anymore. You don't get to be the weight I carry. I survived you, and I'll keep surviving." He looked up, face red and wet. "Does that mean you hate me?" I swallowed hard. "No, hate takes too much. I'm done giving you anything. Not love, not hate, nothing." His face crumpled. He tried to speak, but the guard at the door tapped the glass. Time was up. I stood slowly. My chair scraped the floor. "Goodbye, Tyler," I said softly. For the first time, I meant it as final. The guard opened the door. I stepped out, the heavy steel shutting behind me with a clang that echoed through my bones. The Montana air outside was sharp, clean. I breathed it in like I hadn't in years. Jack was waiting by his truck. He'd driven me here, stood back, let me go in alone. "How was it?" he asked. I looked toward the mountains in the distance, their peaks catching the evening sun. "It was the last chapter," I said. He nodded, not asking more. We drove in silence. Back home, I walked into my office. On the desk, a stack of applications for next year's scholarships waited. Photos of kids with grease on their hands, welding helmets under their arms, eyes full of hunger and hope. I picked up one. A boy from Butte, 17, raised by his grandmother. He wanted to be a mechanic, said he loved the smell of motor oil and the hum of an engine. I smiled faintly. "All right, kid," I murmured. "Let's get you started." I signed the approval, setting his future in motion. That night I sat in Sarah's rocking chair, the foundation papers stacked neatly beside me. Outside, the wind rattled the pines. I whispered to the dark, "I kept my promise, Sarah. Not to him. To you. To the idea of what family should have been." The house creaked. The silence settled. For the first time in years, it didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace.